This is the Kindy Rockstars Podcast, Season 5. Bringing you incredibly talented singers, artists, creators, and producers in the genre of children's music. I'm your host, Patrick Adams. Each episode will feature songs, albums, videos, or live performances, along with great stories from the artists themselves. Kindy Rockstars Season 5 is proud to be supported and sponsored by Waltmania Public Relations, serving the family entertainment community for more than 20 years. And now, on with the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Kindy Rockstars. I am really happy to have on the show with me today a producer whose name has come up many times with other guests I've had on the show this season and prior seasons. Does a lot of great work for us Kindy artists, and I myself have worked with him a few times. Welcome, James Coffey, Creative Force CEO, Chief Cook and Bottle Washer of Blue Vision Music. Welcome to the show, James.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. And I will refer to you as Jim going forward for the rest of the show.
That's right. Once I get to know somebody, it's Jim after that.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your history, how you got to where you are today, and we can kind of focus maybe on the production side of things first, because I don't have many producers on the show, and I've been looking forward to having one on, so we can definitely dive into that. But tell us a little bit about your background and your history.
If we want to go to the beginning, I was kind of the typical kid that took piano lessons when I was a kid. Didn't necessarily enjoy it a whole lot. It was just kind of, something that parents made you do, and I did it, and it seemed fine. And then, around 10, 11, 12, I started listening to more popular music, and I went, well, if I could play that, then things would be much more interesting. So, started working on things off the radio, off of records, and learning to play, forming small little bands, as some of us do, when we're in middle school and things like that. And pretty much from then on, music seemed to be a direction that I was headed in. Formed some bands, in high school, started playing more seriously as far as playing out and making some money, doing proms, doing all those kinds of things. And then soon after that, after high school, then it was cover bands, nightclubs, things like that, did a little traveling. And then came a turning point where, it was like, is this really what I want to keep doing? This sort of thing. It was, getting to be a little bit of a drudgery, being up till 2 or 3 in the morning every time. And you felt kind of separated from the rest of the world because they're all doing regular things and you're doing kind of an odd hour thing. So my friends continued on with what they were doing. And then I decided to go to college. I decided to get a degree from Indiana University. And I started out with a piano performance degree. And I basically, all the gear that I had when I was playing in clubs and stuff, I sold the whole shebang and bought a nice little baby grand piano and was really, really going to dig in to getting, my technique down and my chops and things like that. And then another turning point was I had a very wise advisor in college who said, for what you're going to do in the future, you don't really need a performance degree. Why don't you lean more towards education? Because, a lot of musicians, teach while they're performing, and I certainly know a lot of them that do. And I'm like, that sounds like a plan. So I really had no plan to actually go into teaching. But then I graduated, I got married, and I thought, maybe it would be something to try. I could perform during the summer and I could teach, during the school year. And right off the bat, I got offered a job to teach K through 5 general music in 2 different public schools. So I did that going into it cold. I really had no idea what I was getting into. And that's when I fell in love with kids as an audience. I just thought, they are open. They like to listen to things. They definitely tell you when they don't like things. And it was just a nice fit for me because I was still, playing songs off of the radio, songs that they were familiar with, yet I had the college background with some of the classical stuff. Did a lot of jazz too before I started teaching. So it was a good mix. I could play things for them, and they were delighted to listen. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of curriculum for me to follow. We had the old silver Burdette books, which were like all dusty in the corner, so I looked through those. But I had done some songwriting, so I thought I'll just start writing songs for kids. All the musicals that we did and the summer and spring programs, I would write all the music for that, and the kids seemed to enjoy it, and I enjoyed writing for them. So it just kind of went on from there for the next 12 years. I taught that. And then it got a little bit of, we got into that, I think every state gets into this as far as funding, are we going to have the arts next year? Are we? Are you going to have a job next year? And I always was sweating that until the point where I just said, I'm not going to sweat it anymore. I'm going to leave teaching and branch out. And I had done a few jobs for people as far as getting paid to record some songs and stuff like that. And I thought maybe I could make this work. So in the mid to late '90s, I formed the Blue Vision Music Studio. I knew from prior, from playing in clubs and stuff like that, I didn't want to strike out as just a solo artist. I really wanted to try to do it as a business. So the studio route, I bit the bullet and got a loan and bought a bunch of studio equipment, and just took off from there. Was very fortunate to run into some people who needed music for videos, children's videos, and some other types of things, and was able to say, this might bring in some money if I can work at it. And so from then on, and I did produce most of my own albums, but then started doing albums for other artists, and on and on. And that's how that all got started up until what we do today.
Very cool. Well, having formed in the 90s, and the 90s don't seem like a long time ago, but in the age of technology, it's a lifetime ago. How have, especially where it comes to the production work, how have you evolved over time with the
Well, I mean, you're right
technology?
on the money there. That was really the cusp of, us heading in. I had done some recording prior to that with cassettes and reel to reels and stuff, but not a lot. So when I bought that first equipment to studio, it was all computer driven. It was all digital. Didn't have a lot of tracks back then. I mean, they were not necessarily, except for the big studios. My little studio could not run more than 4 audio tracks at a time on my little Mac computer that I got, but it all worked. I was, recording and stuff like that. So I was really getting baptized into the digital age right from the beginning, and I did not look back from then. So yeah, I don't even know how I would have done it if I hadn't have been able to record that way at that time. And it also went hand in hand with, because I started also creating my own websites and doing a lot of technology thing that wasn't quite in hand yet for a lot of people, especially children's musicians, which at that time here in Indiana, I didn't even know there were other people really doing this
Yeah.
seriously. But I got very fortunate right away. I hooked up with Beth Blends Klukas, who I got through another person that was helping promote some videos that I was working on, and she said, "Oh, you got to get to know Beth," and she kind of led my hand into the world of other children's artists and just the whole world of how that works. So, yeah, very fortunate to be right at that point where digital stuff was really happening, and obviously, as you know, leaps and bounds after that. It's the next thing you know, you've got more than 4 audio tracks. You got as many audio tracks as you need. So yeah, haven't looked back since then.
Yeah, and having a look at your bio, you've had the opportunity, I guess, to have either your music or other artists' music with some really big companies like Disney and others, right?
That's basically through working with like some third party companies who basically get permission from Disney or get permission from Sesame Street to produce songs. A few times I've had to talk directly to representatives from Disney or DreamWorks and do some Zoom calls just to make sure everything's on track. And then, of course, the fun part is everything has to be approved by those companies. So not as tough as you think. Disney people are very friendly and accommodating, and they make good suggestions, and that has all worked out. But yeah, there has been a time in the past that you could easily walk into a Walmart or a Target or a major retail store, and there will be products sitting on the shelf that have the Disney logo or Sesame Street or something like that, and has songs on it that come from my studio. So that's been a pretty cool experience.
Very cool. What kind of advice would you give to aspiring producers? What kind of things would they focus? Because it's such an important skill, and it's as you evolve as a musician, if you can understand the ins and outs of production. I'm myself, I'm like an amateur, but I'm learning. But what
Yeah.
kind of advice would you give to aspiring producers?
Well, and that's so glad that I've had this chance for us to focus on that, because it's again that's kind of an evolution thing. Maybe it's kind of de-evolved because a lot of people don't use producers. Some people don't need them, but I think some people don't realize what they're missing out on as far as somebody that can help, not only help do the engineering, but help lead them in a certain direction as far as sound and performance and stuff like that. So the first skill that I think people easily bypass is just learning to listen. Um, I've even put together some workshops, and people are like, I'm a musician. I got ears. I don't need to learn to listen. And I'm like, seriously, you don't. You need to be able to listen and recognize. You have to have a vision. Not to be corny here, but blue vision music, that's what we are. You have to have a vision of where this song or this production is going to go. And the only way to do that is to listen to what you got and then know how you're going to refine it and then move on from then. So the listening part is, and people don't realize when you take college classes in audio production, you take a class in listening. You take a class. I took one. It's called Golden Ears, where you literally sit and listen to static is what you do, and then they change it. They'll up the high frequency a little bit and see if you notice, or they'll dip the low frequency. And not only do they ask if you notice, they ask what frequency has been dipped. And at first you're like, it's just static. I don't, but as you evolve and as you listen, you're like, oh yeah, I hear, that needs a little boost there, that needs a little dip there. So it is a whole different set of ears when you're a producer, and it can be a good thing and a bad thing, because that also means that when you listen to other productions, sometimes you're like, well, I would have done that a little different, but it's fine. But listening and, don't sweat some of the details. Some people go on and on about their gear. Oh yeah, I use Pro Tools, I use Logic, I use this, I use that. It's really more about just being comfortable with that vision of what you need. This needs maybe a little EQ here, this needs a little compression here, and how you get there is, to me, is not that important. I'm a Pro Tools guy for a long time, but I also work on Logic. Some of the people I work with have GarageBand, so we work with that. We work with whatever they got. And if you know what direction you're going in, you can get there. I mean, I've heard great productions on GarageBand. So don't sweat that sort of thing, as far as your gear or the plugins, because you can get addicted to plugins. I can tell you.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, look at this one. And then I'm like, I don't need it. I have to have that other little voice in my head saying, you don't really need that. So, but sometimes the other voice wins out and I get it anyway. So,
Yeah.
but that listening part, I tell you, I can't emphasize that, and how to talk about audio, which is hard. I mean, we're just used to hearing it and liking it or not liking it, but to describe it, I remember going back to my teaching years, even with the little kids, we would have these listening sessions, and I would say, just listen for 30 seconds, and we'd just sit there and listen. And some of the kids at the end would say, I didn't hear anything. And some of the kids would say, oh, I heard, us kind of shuffling in our chairs, or I heard the teacher down the hall, or, and that's just a whole mindset of how to listen more carefully. I even used to tell my students if they didn't hear something, they should just listen harder. So, so the listening part, don't sweat the gear, be open. In children's music, I especially worry a little bit about being able to get good feedback from people. So you got to have a good circle of people who will tell you straight out whether something sounds good or doesn't sound good. Because as a community, we're very supportive and we all want to say good things. But if we're only hearing good things all the time, it doesn't leave much room for growth.
Yeah.
So you got to be honest with yourself, challenge yourself, put your music up against other people's music and listen to them side by side. And, I have a great list of, really professional recordings that I listen to prior to like releasing an album and stuff and go, is my bass right around in the range of their bass? Does my kick drum sound good? Because the fault with production is using our senses. Is our senses are built to that they like to have things be good. Our taste, our sight, our ears, and your ears will change. You start listening to something that doesn't sound good, it will try to make it sound good, and then you start to lose perspective as far as what you're actually listening to. So you got to cleanse your palate and go back and listen to something that you are guaranteed sounds good. So
Yeah. Some of the most fascinating conversations I've had is, in working with some other artists and producers on songs, especially some of the collaborations on Kindies through the 80s, is just the things that they're able to hear that I don't.
right,
And focusing on like 1 or 2 seconds of a song where they this has to be corrected, and watching them do what they do, I'm like, that's a producer's ear right there. I think they're
right.
hearing something
And be
that
familiar with the tools to correct it. Because I remember being in the studio with another artist, and she was saying, "I think we need less reverb there." And I said, "Well, let's think about that. Do we need less reverb, or does it need to be a smaller room? Does it need to be less pre-delay? Does it need to be, just turning the knob down sometimes isn't the answer." We get into that habit, especially in mixing, that you want something louder, you grab the fader and you turn it up, when a lot of times the answer is to turn other things down, not to turn that up, especially in a vocal, It's like you keep inching that vocal up and up and up, and pretty soon it's maxed out. So knowing those tools as far as, where you want to go with it, that's just something that you get through experience. There's not much more you can do from learning that.
Yep. Yeah, no, one of the things I in particular have learned is in having other producers work on songs that I've done is understanding what they're hearing, and knowing, okay, I'm not even going to do that the next time.
Right.
It's it's kind of as you
Well, and
evolve.
one of the things that drives me a little nutty is people has how to get feedback from people. Like a lot of artists will come back and say, "Oh, I asked so and so, do you think that snare drum's too loud?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's the wrong question," because there's this psycho acoustic thing that goes on in your brain as soon as you say snare drum. Of course, the snare drum's going to be louder because that's what you're focused on. So don't ask them if it's louder or quieter. Ask them broad questions. And try not to preclude what the answer is what you're doing. If you say focus on this, am I singing too flat? Am I singing too sharp? And people are dying to give you feedback. So whether it's the right feedback or not is another question. But ask people, how does it sound? How does it make you feel? You know, Now, if they are people who have experience in production and mixing, yeah, you can ask them specific things like that because they know, hopefully they've trained themselves not to get derailed by a question about specifics. But it's hard. Like I said, it's hard to talk about music in general and especially audio when it's a listening thing and not a verbal thing necessarily.
Well, one of the things that we're gonna listen to today is a demo reel that you put together. So kind of help set this one up, and then we'll have everyone check it out.
It's a nice, I think, collection. Very hard to put together without it being like a half hour long. But some of it is some recent stuff. Some of it is just some stuff from a while back. Most of it is the production, the mixing and stuff, and the instrumentation was done by myself, either on the instruments themselves, as far as acoustically, or using some samples and digital enhancements here and there. I try to stick specifically to the real deal, as they say. If it's guitar or keyboard or whatever, I can take care of that with the instruments I have in the studio. But they are basically things that highlight productions as far as what I liked when I was done. I could listen to this over and over. It sounds good to me. So it's a nice little thing. If I left anybody out who's listening to this right now, I apologize. But so I had to cut it down. But some of these are some of my favorite artists that I work with, and should be some good listening in there as far as production and song quality from the artist.
Very good. Yeah, and for any artists out there that are listening that have production needs and you haven't met or been introduced to James, I like I said, your name has come up so many times from guests I've had on the show this season. So definitely a big resource for us in the children's music community. Let's check out this demo reel. James Coffey, or Jim Coffey, Blue Vision Music has put this together, and we're going to play it right now.
To help you make it stronger, because of you, you're a fighter. For what you've been through, shine brighter when you smile, my butterfly. La canción en tu alma, escucha el ritmo de tu corazón. Baila con la música que encuentres, comparte la canción, comparte la canción. Pues baila, baila, baila conmigo, baila, baila, baila conmigo. Mueve los pies, mueve los pies.
But I say, hey, hey, ho, ho, yo, ho, life doesn't always exactly go quite the way you want. Sometimes it's, oh no, hey, hey, ho, yo, ho, hey.
Bet you never thought about the weather when snow was on the ground. Soon the sun will seem to shine forever once the green grows all around. Butterflies fly, clouds sail by, it's spring, it's spring. Honeybees buzz, everything does, it's spring, it's spring, it's spring, it's spring. The whole world comes alive, it's spring, it's spring.
Russia, China, Jordan, Mexico. There are people making music everywhere you go. With voices, winds and strings, they pluck and blow and hum. But underneath it all is the beating of the drum. One drum, many songs, one drum. Un tambor, muchas canciones, un tambor.
Be who you are, be brave, be loud. Be who you are, be bold, be proud. Speak up for yourself, don't follow the crowd. Just be who you are. Be who you are, be brave, be loud. Be who you are, be bold, be proud. Speak up for yourself, don't follow the crowd. Just be who you are. Just be who you are. Just be who you are. He's Oxford the octopus, proud to be an octopus. Friends say he's a smart fellow. He can change his colors when he's happy or mad, to red, black or yellow. Ooh-wee, kazooie, he's Oxford the octopus. Octa-ooey, octa-gooey, he's Oxford the octopus. Well, penguins are jumping, penguins are jumping all day long. Penguins
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty.
Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you.
I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you.
So let's make the most of this beautiful day.
Since we're together, we might as well say,
Would you be mine?
Could you be mine?
Won't you be my neighbor?
The more we get together, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. For your friends are my friends, and my friends are your friends. The more we get together, the happier we'll be.
I hope everybody enjoyed that demo reel. Again, can't stress enough, if you need a producer, you've definitely got an option here in Jim Coffey and Blue Vision Music. But speaking of music, let's talk about some of your own music. And we're going to feature a song. It's called Clickety Clack. Tell us a little bit about this song.
Well, one of my niches that I fell into, one of the first jobs I've got in the studio was producing songs for other people's videos, for children's videos. And I met up with several companies that produce videos about trains, trucks, tractors, all the big machines, things that kids love, which is one of the reasons why they were so successful at doing it. And basically then I was a songwriter for hire. And I didn't necessarily start out being an artist as far as a singer-songwriter, but I didn't really know anybody else who was going to sing the songs, and I couldn't really afford to pay anybody to sing the songs. So I started just trying to develop some sort of vocals and singing, and the videos turned out to be rather successful. There's a whole series of videos called I Love trains, I love trucks, I love tractors. We even did a whole series called I Love Tractors. Oh, it was all about John Deere. I've done a whole series of songs for videos about John Deere and Caterpillar trucks and machines and bulldozers and all types of things. So this was a song that was produced for those videos. I think it's also on a series of videos called Lots and Lots. Lots and lots of trucks, lots and lots of trains. If you Google that or go on YouTube, you'll find all kinds of stuff like that. So hopefully this will be on an album. I do have enough songs to do an album, but this is one of my favorite songs vocally and production-wise that I really enjoyed doing.
Outstanding. All right. Well, we're going to play it now for everyone. Here it is, Clickety Clack by Jim Coffey.
Grandpappy would say in the good old days, he liked riding the railways. You could smell the smoke coming out the stack and hear the sound of that clickety-clack, that clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Here comes a train down the railroad track. You can smell the smoke coming out the stack and hear the sound of that clickety-clack. My mama used to ride on the railway with me at her side as the cabin swayed. I would take a nap with my head in her lap, listening to that clickety-clack, that clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Here comes a train down the railroad track. You can smell the smoke coming out the stack and hear the sound of that clickety-clack. I'm sitting at the station at 4:45, waiting for the east train to arrive. I can see the light coming down the track and hear the sound of that clickety clack, that clickety clack, clickety clack. Here comes a train down the railroad track. You can smell the smoke coming out the stack and hear the sound of that clickety clack. Whenever I'm down and feeling blue, there's really only one thing I can do. I can sit on the hill by the railroad track and listen to the sound of that clickety clack, that clickety clack, clickety clack. Here comes a train down the railroad track. You can smell the smoke coming out the stack and hear the sound of that clickety clack, that clickety clack, clickety clack. Here comes a train down the railroad track. You can smell the smoke coming out the stack and hear the sound of that clickety clack, and hear the sound of that clickety clack, and hear the sound of that clickety clack.
And that was the song Clickety Clack. All right, Jim, as we kind of move towards wrapping up here, I did want to touch on one other topic. You have been working on some animation for other artists as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
So one of the things that I wouldn't necessarily call it a hobby, but since I had worked with so many other video producers and animations, one of the things that I found that helped my studio become successful is being able to show them what it would look like with their productions. So, especially if I'm trying to get a job from somebody I've never worked with, their mind is not. I even have people say, well, how is this song going to work with my stuff? Or how is this going to work in? And sometimes they can't make that leap. So I would either take their video and put it with the music, or I would create my own animation. So it kind of started out as a marketing tool. And I've done some for myself, and I've done some workshops on animation. And then it's something that I just totally really enjoy and gets my mind out of the audio for a while, which is kind of important sometimes to step outside what you normally do and get a fresh start. And so the animation, I've always been a very visual person. I probably would have been a visual artist if I hadn't gone into music. So I did a few animation for some people and just started learning more about it and more about the techniques. Always, as you probably are, fascinated by like the Disney animations and stuff that we grew up on. What I like about it is sort of the same as what I like about writing songs. You create a story. So it's just another way to tell a story. It's visually you kind of help the song, hopefully helps the song tell the story in a visual type manner. So it start becoming a regular thing with my studio. I mean, I can't think of a time in the last couple of years that I haven't been working on an animation for somebody. So it's to me, it's darn right fun. It's just to create a character and have it sing, like the last one I just did was for Dana Cohenauer. And she's like, well, let's create a character where I sing. And I'm like, let's go for it. So it was lots of fun to be able to have, do the lip sync and have, her character sing and then create, I'll try to create a little more emotion with the song so that people feel a bit of an impact. And it's, nowadays, I think every artist needs to have something visual, don't you think?
Definitely. I absolutely agree.
Yeah, it has to be video or animation. Unfortunately, none of us really make a lot of money out of it, but you just put it in take it out of that marketing budget if you have it, because people really love to see the visual part. So, so happy to help that. I mean, our tagline, Blue Vision Music, is bringing music and media to kids. So it includes, the visual, video, animation. We've produced songs for products like toothbrushes, and if it makes music and it makes kids happy, then we've probably done it and happy to do so.
Yeah. No, YouTube is such a critical tool. And again, it's another way to make money. And if you can put something visual to the song, it just, it expands the reach and depending on
It
how
gives you another tool because it is so hard
exactly.
to break through the noise. I mean, there is so much stuff. It used to be there's so much. I used to say there's so much stuff. It's hard to break through. There's so much good stuff now. That becomes, even a harder nut to crack when you're dealing with a lot of fabulous people that we have in children's and kindie music these days.
Yeah. Well, Jim, I wanted to say thank you so much for everything that you not only do for artists as a whole, the community, the Children's Music Network, the couple times that we've worked together. It's amazingly critical skill set and talent to have, and you definitely make artists better, and definitely increase the quality of what's going out there
I
for us.
often tell them sometimes you deserve to sound better than than especially like with home recordings and things like that, which you have a lot. And it's sort of the curse of the producer. As soon as I hear what they're doing, I can imagine, if there was some drums in there, maybe some jazz brushes, you go a little crazy with it. But and then to have it all come together at the end and have the artist be just so happy about the production, that is reward in itself.
Awesome. Well, Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to talking to you and working with you again soon.
All right. Thank you, Patrick.